present here. I welcome you for today's Policy in our session on AI, economic prosperity, inequality, and market structure. MA Public Policy, introduced in 2021, is an interdisciplinary postgraduate program under the Department of Professional Studies at the School of Commerce, Finance, and Accounts. Policy Nudge is an initiative by MAPP Coed to foster discussions on crucial policy issues to bring together experts, scholars, and students. Together, in this session, we aim to bridge the gap between theory and practice, facilitating meaningful dialogue on pressing social economic challenges and policy. Today's session, we dive deep into the impact on AI, economic policy, and market conditions, and broader social outcomes. We are honored to have with us Dr. Vipin P. Veetil, an assistant professor at IIM Kozhikode, whose expertise lies in monetary economics, macroeconomics, and agenda-based modeling. His research has been featured in leading journals such as Journal of Economic Dynamics and Control and Macroeconomics Dynamics. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Dr. Veetil in sharing his insights with us today.
I'm delighted to be here. Manoj called me some weeks ago. He said, would you come to Christ University and give a talk? I said, I'm happy to. I want 1 lakh rupees per day. And then Manoj said, train ticket and food. And then I said, good food. So Manoj agreed, and so I am here. Okay. Right. I have known Manoj from, at the time. I guess it's time to start now. Right. I have known Manoj from the time, I was in my early 20s. Where is Manoj? From the time I was in my early 20s, I was interning at a think tank in Delhi, and Manoj was my manager in some senses for a bit. So, I've kind of, Manoj and I both have kind of worked through this space a little bit. And when Manoj said, why don't you come over? I said, yeah, I'd be delighted to. I wasn't aware that there is a public policy program here. It's good to know there is a public policy program. Okay. My talk today would be on the impact of AI, artificial intelligence, on prosperity, inequality, and market structure. Okay, right? And there is a very specific reason why prosperity first, inequality second, and market structure third. Okay. They are in the order of difficulty. Okay. It's much easier to talk about the impact of AI on economic prosperity, somewhat more difficult to talk about the impact on AI on inequality, and far more difficult to talk about the impact on AI on market structure. Okay, so we'll cover each of these three in turn at a relatively slow pace. Okay. If you have substantive questions, I would leave them till the end, right? But if you have sort of smaller queries, clarificatory questions, I would just raise my hand, and I could take those as the lecture proceeds. Okay. So first bit, right? What is the impact of AI on economic prosperity? Okay. So the way economists think about AI is fairly simple. It's a windfall gain. It's a windfall gain. Okay. So think about, for instance, a scenario in which, for whatever reasons, the weather gods decide, right? The weather gods decide that that the temperature would be optimal for the growth of rice. Take, for instance, Kerala, where I work, right? Suppose the weather gods decide that for the next, century, right, or forever from now onwards, right, the temperature would be just optimal for the growth of rice. And suppose the weather gods decide that, the rains would be just optimal for the growth of rice, right? And suppose the weather gods also decide that, gods more generally get together and decide that, I would really appreciate it if people stop coming in and out. You can do whatever you want, but this is the last person who comes in, right? Where was I? Gods getting together, yes. Suppose the gods get together and decide that not only would the weather be great, right, but there would be no pests, no more pests that eat into rice, right, and there would be a blessing of sorts that you no longer have to work at all to grow rice. Rice would just grow and harvest itself. Okay, so you wake up in the morning and the rice crop is ready and it's going to harvest itself and your silos are going to get filled. Okay, that's a windfall gain. Okay, AI is a windfall gain across sectors in the economy. Okay, it's not a windfall gain for one specific sector or one specific area or one specific country or one specific production process. It's a general purpose technology. It's a windfall gain across sectors. Okay, right? And just like any other windfall gain, it's going to create the possibility of us as human beings consuming a lot more. So the simplest setting in which to understand impact of AI on economic prosperity is to consider a world, right, where there is only one person. So some of you who have taken, under the principles of economics might have encountered this character called Robinson Crusoe. Right? Robinson Crusoe is an individual. He's on an island by himself, and for some reason he decides to produce and consume. Okay. Hello. One of my students is here from IIM Kozhikode. Okay. Right. So Robinson Crusoe is on an island by himself, and he decides to produce and consume. Right. And that is the setting in which you should begin thinking about AI. Right. So suppose you are on an island by yourself. Right. Here is what AI has done. There was some field in which you had to work to grow rice. You no longer have to work. You wake up in the morning and the rice crop is just there. You had to go fishing. You no longer have to go fishing. You wake up and there is, I don't know, a bucket of fish waiting for you. Right? Maybe roasted already. Right? Okay. That is what has changed. There is just more available. I should stop now or? I see. Okay. Just let me know how I should respond to the bells. Right? Okay. Right. So you just have more of things. Right? Now, in a Robinson Crusoe setting, there isn't much to do in terms of economic analysis. It's fairly straightforward. He's better off because there is more of things. Right? Things get complicated in a setting where there are many, many people. Right? And you will already see the complication in the Kerala example that I began with, and the rice example I began with. Because how is that example different? For one, there are people who are involved in the production of rice. While it is true that for consumers there is a lot more rice available at much lower cost, right? One of the things that has changed is that what should people who were earlier making rice do? What should they do now? Okay? And matters are much more involved. Because not only did you have labor making rice, you also had various kinds of capital which were inputs into the production of rice. And there was various kinds of equipment that went into making the equipment that goes into making of rice. Okay? There was probably some chemicals and fertilizers, pesticides that were sprayed into, that went into the making of rice. Right? These pesticides and fertilizers didn't fall from up above. Right? There were factories that produced these pesticides and fertilizers. Those factories had other people manufacture equipment for the factories, so on and so forth. There's a long supply chain that went into the production of rice. Now none of that is required. Okay? Is that a problem in and of itself? No. But your full gains in economic prosperity comes not from AI only, but from finding other uses for the resources that are not required for the production of rice anymore. Okay? So you do have more rice, but you can also have more wheat, you can have more tourism, you can have more foot massages, right? You can have whatever more. But for that you need to take these people and you need to take the capital equipment and you need to take the whole production process and human energies involved in the making of rice and shift that to other uses. Right? So if you can take people who were making rice and shift them into tourism, if you can take equipment that was making rice and shift that into production of wheat, right? If you can take chemicals that were used for making rice and shift them to other uses, right, you will get an increase in output in other sectors of the economy. So then AI in that case would increase not only the production of rice, but also production of lots of other goods in the economy. Right? So unlike the Robinson Crusoe setting, in the Robinson Crusoe setting, this allocation is very simple. Consider the following scenario. Suppose Robinson Crusoe did only two things. Right? He would go fishing, right, and he grows rice. Right? Once AI comes, And AI makes rice kind of, easy. He doesn't have to make rice anymore. It's very simple for him to decide what he does more of. Right? All he needs to do is to tell himself, I am not going to work, work on the rice farm anymore. I am actually going to spend more time fishing. The reallocation of his own resource is near immediate. The only person he has to talk to is himself. Okay? Near immediate reallocation of resources. Okay? In fact, he does two things. He says, I don't have to grow rice anymore. So here are two substitute uses of my time. I can get more fish, or I can consume more leisure. I can just relax more. Economists are funny that way, right? They wouldn't say relax more. They would say consume more leisure. It makes us sound kind of smart and all of that. But really, not just that. We actually think of consumption of more leisure. Like if you study economics for long enough, you don't think of kind of relaxing anymore. You think of relaxing as consumption of leisure. Right? If you don't believe me, ask your economics faculty members. I'm sure that's how they think of it. What are you doing now? Consuming leisure. Right? Try. Okay? Okay? Right? So for Robinson Crusoe, it's terribly easy. Right? He wakes up in the morning, he says, what should I do now? Right? We have all this additional rice, I don't have to work in the paddy fields anymore. What do I do? Here is two things I can do. I can take the 4 hours I used to work in the paddy field, I'm going to go fishing for two additional hours, and 2 additional hours I'm just going to slouch around. Okay? But it's not, this reallocation of resources is not trivial when you have many people working in an economy together. Okay? How do you get the people from the paddy fields in Kerala reallocated to other work? How do you get the capital equipment from the paddy fields in Kerala reallocated to other work? How do you get the equipment that was used to make the equipment that went into the paddy fields to other work? How do you get the managers who are managing the chemical factories reallocated to other work? Right? Now the reallocation of resources in an economic system happens through prices. Okay? And here is where, if you really want to understand how AI is going to affect prosperity, you better have a good sense of how prices work and what the price system does. Okay? Without that, it's difficult to understand, right, the short-term dynamics of what AI is going to do to economic growth. It is true that 10, 20 years from now, wherever, we will all have more of things, right? But the short term, right, all the exciting stuff in the short term is about the reallocation of resources. And without knowing how the price system works, you cannot understand the reallocation of these resources. Here is a primer on understanding how the price system works. Suppose a coal mine is discovered in Brazil. Okay. Humanity as a whole has more coal, right? And rationality requires us in some senses to use more of coal and less of coal substitutes. Right? How does this happen? Is it that the person who's discovered a new coal mine in Brazil picks up the phone, calls everyone around the world and says, hey, hello, what is your name? Yeah, Emerald. Hey, Emerald, right? Isn't it cold in Bangalore? Right? I know you buy wool and sweaters and all of that. Why don't you buy less wool and start using coal for heating your home? Right? And what's your name? Then he calls Jeswarya and he says, hey, Jeswarya, right? We have more coal. I just called Emerald. He's agreed to use more coal. Can you also use more coal and less of coal substitutes? Right? Then he calls somebody in Scotland and says, hey, look, now Jeswarya and Emerald need less wool, so stop rearing sheep. We don't need as many sheep anymore. Right? Why don't you open up your farms for other uses? Maybe it could become a place for tourism. Right? And then he makes another call, and millions of phone calls, and relies on the goodwill of these people, right, to do exactly what they promised. This is not what happens. This system has two problems. One, there's lots to communicate. And two, you have to rely on the goodwill of people. Okay? The price system overcomes both these problems. Here is what the guy does instead. Right? He goes to the market for coal and sells coal. And immediately the price of coal drops. And what does Emerald do? A dip in the price of coal. Sweater prices remain the same, coal prices become cheaper, right? Buy less wool and buy more coal. What does the person in Scotland do? People don't want my sweaters anymore. They are not purchasing wool. Right? Should I rear sheep anymore? No. Rear fewer sheep. Right? Open up my farm for alternate uses. I don't know, tourism or whatever else. Right? Okay? Now note that we've kind of solved both problems. The price system solves both problems. You do not have to make millions of phone calls. So the amount of information that needs to be transferred has been sizably reduced. All you need to look at is one number. Okay? Second, you don't have to rely on the goodwill of people. I no longer have to, hope that whatever Emerald has promised me. I don't know what kind of reputation you have, Emerald. Huh? I don't know. I have to ask people around you. Huh? Are you in the second year of the program? Then people don't know you that much. Huh? So, right? I don't know. Maybe your teachers know you, right? So, right? So Emerald says, in the first system, I really had to depend on what Emerald said. I had to hope that he keeps his promise. In the second system, it's not true anymore. Emerald, now acting in his own self-interest, uses more coal and less of coal substitutes. This is why Adam Smith says that individuals pursuing their own self-interest can lead to the public good or the social good. Right? When, under what circumstance? Not always. Not if you are pursuing your own self-interest and you decide to, I don't know, right, enter someone's house and grab their property. No. Right? In a system where property titles are secured, right, and you're acting in your own self-interest, guided by the invisible hand of the markets, which is what? The price system. The invisible hand is nothing but the price system. Right? When you act in your own self-interest, guided by the price system, you generate the public good without necessarily intending to, wanting to, or knowing it. Okay? Right? So, when you have more coal, this is how the reallocation of resources happen. And a wide variety of reallocation happens. Right? So, imagine what happens in the farm in Scotland. They are not rearing sheep anymore. The people who were used in, who played a role in rearing sheep, they are not required anymore. If you convert into a hotel, you need other people who are going to build hotels. There is some acquisition of new skills. Right? Some transfer of labor, some acquisition of new skills. Capital itself needs to change. Then there is this whole process of transition that happens. Okay? Right? And at each stage, the process is helped by the price system. Right? For instance, as soon as you tell your workers that I am not going to rear sheep anymore, what is it that you tell them? That you don't have a job anymore. Rearing sheep doesn't pay. The signal to them is this skill doesn't pay here in Scotland. So here are my options. Either I move elsewhere or I acquire new skills. Again, driven by what? The drop in my wages, which is nothing but a price. At each stage, so change in one price generate changes in other prices, and each stage these changes in prices are triggering human action. That is, human beings are deciding to change what they do, where they do, and how they do, which is generating the next sequence of prices, which is driving new set of human actions. Okay? And it is this whole complex process of sequential changes in prices and sequential changes in human behavior which is leading to the reallocation of resources and all of humanity adapting to the availability of more coal. Okay? Now all of this needs to happen with AI. AI is a general purpose technology which allows us to have more of many things. Not more of everything, but more of many things. Okay? In a Robinson Crusoe economy, you really don't need prices. And one of the strangest things about economics textbooks is that you often hear about prices in the context of a Robinson Crusoe economy. Note, Robinson Crusoe does not need prices. Prices is a way to communicate between large numbers of people. One individual does not need prices. You know what to do. You wake up, you see there is rice which is just growing for nothing. I don't need to put any effort into growing rice. I go fishing or do something else. Right? If the island just had Emerald and me, we don't need prices. Why? Why Emerald? One line answer, Emerald. Island has me and you. Right? And we do fishing and we grow crops. We wake up one morning and the crops are growing for themselves. Yeah, we just talk to each other. Why do we need prices? Emerald and I just talk to each other. What if it was Emerald, Manoj and me? Do we need prices? No. Prices come in when there are sufficiently large number of people that talking becomes infeasible. Note that when it's Emerald and me, we also kind of I now have faith in Emerald. Not necessarily that he will do what I say, but faith that he may not do what I say, right? We know enough about each other to form reasonable expectations. When you have large numbers of people, you just don't know enough about each other to form reasonable expectations. People through the people in the world economy, the kinds of people who cooperate with each other, people of different religions, different nationalities, different cultures, different personality types, who don't know each other, and many of them would not want to meet each other. Okay, that system cannot function on personal knowledge or faith and all of that. It needs an impersonal system where incentives are aligned, where Emerald, acting in his own self-interest, promotes the general public good. Okay, right? Now, so AI appears on that island where Emerald and I are staying and Manoj is there. We don't need the price system, and reallocation of resources is near immediate. Right? Suppose Manoj was involved in paddy and I was fishing, and I don't know, Emerald was collecting coconuts, and now paddy is not required anymore, it just grows. Right? The three of us sit together, we have a chat, next day onwards we say, okay, Manoj now does sometime he spends getting coconuts, and sometimes he goes with me fishing. Done. But in a large economy like that of India or the world economy, matters are not trivial as that. Okay? Consider the sequence of events that have to unfold for the world economy, or Kerala's economy, or India's economy, or Karnataka's economy to realize the full potential of increases in output that come from AI. And to repeat, right? If AI makes it easy to grow rice, the full potential increase in output has not occurred till people who were, and capital that was used to make rice has been reallocated to other purposes, because you will get an increase in the output of other goods and services. Okay? In the long run, the world economy will be more prosperous. In the long run, the Indian economy will be more prosperous. What will happen in the short run? Which are the economies that will make this transition relatively rapidly, and which are the economies that will struggle? Okay. First thing to understand is that most economic activity happens through organizations. Okay. Firms of different sizes. In the United States, for instance, there are 6 million firms with employees, and about 25 million sole proprietorships. Okay. In India, there are many more. The data are not as reliable, which is why I use the US data. But many more firms and many more sole proprietorships. Okay. Right. AI has not only made it easy to produce rice, but also has made it easy to produce. Right. Maybe this can be. I don't know if this light is not very useful. This light behind me, it's just distracting. Maybe that can be switched off to gray, right? So, where was I before I got? You are my go-to person now for the rest of this lecture. Yeah, right? In India, there are many more firms and many more sole proprietorships, right? Perfect, thank you. Right? Many more firms and many more sole proprietorships, right? Now, question is, isn't this beautiful now? The Indian economy has many more firms and workers, right? Now, note, right? What AI has done, it's not just made rice production easier. It has made the production of certain things easier, and certain other sectors remain somewhat untouched. Its effect is heterogeneous. We took an extreme example when we considered the island, right? What was the extreme example? Right? Rice production is free, right? But fish production and coconut production remains untouched. That's not what AI has done. Take an economy with n goods, whatever number of goods you want, right? It has touched the production of all these goods, but in a heterogeneous manner. Some goods have become very easy to produce, some have become somewhat easy to produce, and some remain somewhat untouched. And note that many of these goods are also inputs into producing each other. Now, you want a sizable reallocation. This calls for a sizable reallocation of labor and capital across the economy. Okay? And prices will signal where to make the reallocation. The price system will work. Okay? Wages in some sectors of the economy will drop, which means what? That's a signal to workers. Do not acquire those skills not required. Right? The stuff that he is doing, for instance, will not be required from now. I could just speak to AI, it listens to me, I'll shut it off. It will be integrated with most of this technology. Okay? Wage will drop there, and the signal to him is acquire new skills, right, do something else. Okay? And those signals each of us will get. Right? How fast this economy transitions to a new equilibrium depends on how free we are to respond to those signals. Okay? Hong Kong, Singapore, United States, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, okay, and some other Western economies that rank high on the Economic Freedom Index, right, will tend to transition faster. What is the Economic Freedom Index and why would they transition faster? Economic Freedom Index, right, there are two organizations in the world that collect what's called the Economic Freedom Index. Everyone who does public policy should. Who's heard of the Economic Freedom Index before? It's horrible. This is horrible. This is horrible. You are going to get into the world and not do any public good. You are not driven by the invisible hand. Okay? You have to know what the Economic Freedom Index is. The Economic Freedom, how do you know about the Economic Freedom Index? Everyone should talk. What's your name? Everyone should talk more. Are you? Whoever is not friends with Jayaprakash needs to be friends with Jayaprakash. If you're friends with Emerald, it's not so important. Jayaprakash is the go-to person. Okay. Now, I tried making you a hero, but there's only so much I can do. If you don't know the Economic Freedom Index, okay. Two organizations collect the Economic Freedom Index. Okay. Right? The Fraser Institute and the Heritage Foundation. Okay, so if I were you after this class, not right now, after this class, I would go look at the Economic Freedom Index, look at different parts of the Economic Freedom Index. Economic Freedom Index essentially tries to measure, right, so it collects, it ranks countries based on a bunch of different metrics, okay, of the following kind, right? How long does it take to open a business? How much does it cost to open a business? Okay, by cost, it is what we typically, it's not like if you want to open a, I don't know, iron smelting plant, how much does it cost? No, right? But how much does it cost to get the regulatory permits? Okay, how much does it cost to get the regulatory clearance and regulatory permits? How long does it take to get the regulatory permits and clearance? So they would come up with things of the following kind, that to open a business of, I don't know, whatever you like, airline for instance. Right? In Hong Kong it takes, let's say, I don't know, 2 days, right? In India it takes 35 years. I'm just coming up with random numbers. But in India it's probably more than 35 years. It's so stringently regulated that you cannot start an airline. Okay? Right? Okay. How is it easy to import and export goods? Okay. Are property titles well defined? Is it clear that this is mine and that is yours? Can you call the police to protect your property? Right? Do courts resolve disputes relatively quickly? Okay, right? With particular emphasis on commercial disputes. When you enter business and suppose, right, Emerald and I have a business contract, right, and we have a dispute, right? It would be nice if we can go to court and get it resolved within reasonable time and at reasonable cost. These are the kinds of things that Economic Freedom Index looks at. There's also World Bank used to collect something called the Ease of Doing Business Index. Who knows about World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index? How good. I mean, very bad that not everybody knows about it, but good that it's a little bit, life is relative, right? Since the last question answer was disastrous, now all of you look good, right? Okay, which is, I don't know, right? Okay, right? And World Bank's Doing Business Index is more explicitly only about doing business, right? How many days to open, how many days to close, right? What are labor regulations like, so on and so forth, blah, 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 okay? Right now, there are some countries which rank very high in economic freedom and doing business, okay? And there are some countries that rank very low. Unfortunately, the country we live in ranks pretty low in economic freedom and doing business, even after all the reforms of the 90s and 2000s and so on and so forth. Okay? It's very difficult to open a business in India. It's very difficult to close a business in India, right? Opening a business in India is a little bit like getting married. Difficult to get out. Even if you don't like it, difficult to get out. Which means what? You don't get in to begin with. Okay? Right? Okay. In India, if you have a business that has more than 10 employees or 20 employees or whatever it is, more than 100 employees, it's very, very difficult to close these businesses. There are a fair number of regulations to meet. Okay? Right? Now, why am I saying all of this? Right? The ability of an economy, right, to benefit from AI depends critically on reallocating resources. And the reallocation of resources depends critically on people changing their behaviors and changing what they do in response to prices. Prices will tell you what to do, but your ability to do that depends on the regulatory environment. If prices, for instance, tells you that it no longer makes sense to have a firm which does, produces good X, and that you should sort of shut this firm and you should get into the production of good Y, right? Your ability to do that depends on the regulatory environment. It is the regulatory environment which allows you to shut a firm, right, move to a new location and hire new people. Right? Economies that make it very difficult to close companies, economies that make it very difficult to start new companies, right, will struggle to benefit from artificial intelligence and the bounty that it has to offer. Okay? Because the reallocation of resources would just not happen. And that's where, this is why I asked you, how many of you know about kind of economic freedom index? That's where public policy students like yourselves come in. Because you are the people, right, that's what this program is called, like nudge. You are the people that nudges the government, right, to change the rules of the economic game. Right? If our rules of the economic game were more like that of the US and Canada, the Indian economy would have benefited much more from AI. Not that we wouldn't, right? But the prosperity that we would realize in about 50 years, right, could have potentially been realized in 5 or 10 years if our economy was sufficiently flexible, was able to quickly reallocate resources. Okay? So again, it's not just the Indian economy, all of South Asia, Africa, for instance, will all struggle because they just don't allow for mobility of labor, mobility of capital, right? They do not have the flexibilities ingrained in them for closing old companies and starting off new companies. Okay? So the answer to the first question is, impact of AI on economic prosperity, positive. Right? It's a no-brainer. You just have more of things. It's a windfall gain. How long will it take us to realize the full windfall gain? The time depends on how regulated your economy is. Okay? Culture matters a little bit, right? More entrepreneurial societies. If you have more entrepreneurial people, you'll make the change faster. But in India, I don't think it's lack of entrepreneurship. It's just sort of this, sort of an economy that is not flexible enough, which is going to be damaging. That's one. Now let me get to the second bit of the talk today, and of course I'm happy to talk about the first bit somewhat later when we have this kind of question answer stuff. Second bit of the talk today is about AI and inequality. Okay. Now note that most economists, when they speak about inequality, right, our concern is not so much only with income inequality, which is why we use the phrase income inequality. Because by income inequality we mean income inequality. Okay. Inequality, we typically mean inequality in well-being or welfare. Okay. And income inequality and inequality in well-being can be very different things. Very, very different things. Okay. But let me get started, before I tell you how they are different, let me get started with income inequality. What will be the impact of AI on income inequality? Okay. There are kind of two ways to think about AI. It definitely augments our capacity, right? But there are two ways to think about how it augments our capacity. One is additive, the other is exponential. Okay? So suppose emerald is X, right? And AI is Y. Okay? One way in which AI increases emerald's sort of productivity is X plus Y. And note, when an economist says productivity, we typically mean wage also. So from my point of view, emerald's wage will roughly reflect his productivity. There may be short-term deviations, but over his lifetime, his wage will pretty much reflect his productivity, his ability to contribute in the production of material goods and services. Okay? The complaints about his boss not paying him enough or whatever else are short-term. If he were that good, he would find another job where he gets paid more. If he's perennially complaining, that just means he likes to complain. Do not listen to him. Okay? So one way to think about it is additive. Right? So if emerald is X, right, and AI is Y, then emerald's productivity is now X plus Y. The other way is to think about it is exponential. Emerald's productivity is Y to the power of X. And that makes all the difference. That makes all the difference. Take AI to be 10. Take the Y to be 10. right? And take emerald to be 1 and Jeswaria to be 2. In the additive model, emerald's productivity is 1 plus 10 and Jeswaria's productivity is 2 plus 10, right? Emerald is 11 and Jeswaria is 12. There is income inequality, but very little, right? Okay. In fact, AI has in some senses reduced income inequality. Why? Because earlier, Emerald was 1 and Jeswaria was 2. Jeswaria was twice as productive. In this additive model, AI has come in. Now it's 11 and 12. It's reduced income inequality. There is the exponential model, which is AI is y to the x. Emerald is now 10 to the 1. Jeswaria is 10 to the 2. 10 to the 1 is, did someone say 100? Okay, 10 to the 10 and 100. Now suppose Jeswaria is 3. In the additive model, Emerald is 11 and Jeswaria is 13. But in the exponential model, Emerald is 10 and Jeswaria is 1,000. Suppose, now and you keep going. Suppose Jeswaria goes to 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. Her productivity is 10 to the power of 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. Inequalities grow massively. Now which of the two is AI? Is it additive or is it exponentiating people's productivity? It's not very clear, but my impression, if I had to take a first guess, I would say it's exponentiating people's productivity. And this I speak of merely from my personal experience. Right? I haven't sort of seen any data or work on this. It will probably take another year, if not another 5 years, before we see micro industry level data on what AI has done to productivity of particular individuals. My own productivity has gotten exponentiated. I build these things. So the person who introduced me said, I build, do you know what you said? What are you doing now? What? I see. You're missing out on the talk. Right. Emerald is not. Right. Okay, so right, I build these things called agent-based models or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, these are complicated models. Long story short, what you need to know is that I have for the last 10 years been working on a fairly complicated model which was written in this language called Python programming language. Okay. Anyways, at some point the language became too slow, and for the last 4 years I've been thinking about moving this to C. By the way, how many of you code in Python or any general purpose programming language? Very bad, terrible. Right? Unless you're planning for unemployment, this is not what I would do. I mean, if you're planning for unemployment, then very good. Otherwise, no. Right? And again, you cannot look at your teachers or the curriculum or whatever else. Why? Because you could just learn to code by yourself. Just go to YouTube. It's very simple, guys. YOUTUBE, and now the last bit is complicated, but try. DOT, don't type it. You see what I mean, right? It's out there, right? Takes about, I don't know, 1 month to 2 months to get a hang over, Python program. What does that do? That allows you to, once you know basic sense of Python programming, now you can use AI to develop models and analyze data, because you can ask AI to generate Python code, but you have enough Python knowledge to make sense of the kind of code it's generating. Going back to my story, now I had this complicated model, I wanted to move to C. Now, I wasn't particularly good at C, I didn't know C, and I learned C, and C was very mess, and then I found another language called Python, which is somewhere between Python and C, right? And then I could do Python, but again, how do you do all of this? It was very complicated. So I tried to hire a research assistant who would work very closely with me, right? But then he was drinking 3 days a week and got jaundice, blah, 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 right? By the way, AI does not drink 3 days a week, does not get jaundice. I fired him, right? You guys don't seem kicked about it. I was, right? Understand, this is, Manoj is not your employer. No one is as nice as him. I am not joking. If you think, I don't know how much time, if you think, no, this is the beast. Right? Why? Because I don't have an option. I've got a grant, I've got to deliver. I can't work with somebody who gets jaundice. Yeah. Or drinks twice or thrice a week. I just can't. I fire you immediately. Right? Because I've got to deliver. I've gotten grants, I've gotten resources, right? And there are people who sacrifice their consumption. How do you get resources to do something? Somebody had resources and decided not to consume, instead lend it to you. They've made a sacrifice. Right? You've got to turn up and produce and deliver. Anyway, so me, for long, this was sitting on the shelf. I had this guy, and human beings have this problem of getting diseases and all of that, right? So then, and plus, one of the issues was this person needed to work closely integrated with me. It was not a project where I could just give it to somebody who does C programming, transforms it and give it to, because I have got to understand the code myself, because I need to work with this code. Okay? So the project was sitting. Last 3 months, it got done. AI. And not some fancy super hyper, I just have a subscription version of ChatGPT. That's it. How many of you have used ChatGPT? Very good. Okay. How many of you have used ChatGPT beyond answering the, assignment stuff nonsense? Beyond that. Very good. Oh, very good. झूठ. सबके रेस करने के बाद. चलो बताओ. How did you use it? Good, very good, right? So, very good. So, maybe when we do this interaction stuff, you can tell us more about what you did, right? Okay. Right. And also some of the others who had raised their hands at the back. And I'll tell you why it's important to say, and again you'll see, lots of people raise their hands about, getting assignments done by AI, but the number of people who were doing something else was few. Okay. Me, I've been my productivity has gotten exponentiated. It's certainly not the additive model. Certainly. And I can go on and on about other things, right? My ability to interact with it with regards to advanced mathematics. Right? Earlier, for instance, if you had to use some kind of mathematics, you had to put in 10,000 hours to learn this stuff. Now, if you put in between 100 and 1,000 hours, you can start having intelligent conversations with the AI about using it for your purpose. Using what? The mathematics for your purpose. It's not it's giving good answers, but it's an intelligent person to have conversations with. Right? So, here is the question with AI. Newton, many years ago, 300, 400 years ago now, right? Wrote to one of his contemporaries, says, I see further than those who came, because I sit on the shoulder of the giants of those who came, of the giants who came before me. Okay? AI is the giant of our era. Right? And the real question is, are you able to sit on its shoulders and see further? What does that mean? You are able to do something with AI which you cannot do without AI, and which AI cannot do without you. Because if it's something that AI can do without you, then you don't have a job. Unless you are willing to work for less than $20 a month. Now, not even that because of DeepSeek. Probably around $1 a month. Okay, so you will be beat out in terms of the price competition, right? So unless you are able to do something which AI cannot do without you and you cannot do without AI, that's where the exciting space is, right? Now, my impression is it's exponentiating. And these 4 or 5 or 6 individuals who used it for social marketing, whatever else, are exponentiating themselves. And the others are not. So what is going to happen to income inequality? Phenomenal rise in income inequality. Not because the poor are getting poorer. No. But there are a handful of individuals whose productivity is going to increase incredibly. Okay. 2 questions. Does that mean there will be an increase in the inequality in well-being? Not necessarily. Well-being depends on how many goods and services we can consume. What is our consumption basket? Okay. Now, what does our ability, so what determines our consumption basket? What determines how much of goods and services we can buy? 2 simple things. One, income, and the other, prices. Right? Income and prices, right? Now, we know income inequality is going to rise, but what about prices? Right? Go back to the first point. AI is making many things cheap. AI is making many things much more, it's just easier to produce. Okay? So prices of many goods and services are going to plummet. Diagnosis of breast cancer. You earlier had to not only get difficult scans done, right, so the equipment was kind of expensive, but you also had to pay a technician to look into the scans to see whether you observe a cancer or not, whether it's benign or malign. This particular, person, clown, call him what you like, who sits and does this, he had to be taken through, I don't know, 5 years of medical school. Before that, he had to be fed and taken to a kind of school. A bus had to be, produced so that this, clown can be taken into a school, blah, blah, blah. Not needed anymore. AI does fabulously well with regards to, visual image processing. Okay, right? And now it kind of, now it can already outdo some of the best technicians. You will hear stories about, oh, AI, misdiagnosed this woman with, malign cancer as benign cancer. Sure. And how many times have human beings misdiagnosed? Let's run front page stories on all the human beings. Your newspapers will be exhausted. Okay, so AI is already doing very well with regards to visual image processing. Right, and so now that job is gone. Great. Two, right, is it's become much cheaper. Right, and X-ray is already. X-rays. Even I could tell from an X-ray whether my bone was broken or not. Right, so that technician was not needed to begin with. Now, of course, he was just not believing me, but anyone could tell, right? वो काला ऐसी line होता है उसमें, right? But now AI, of course, does a fabulous job. So that's cheap now. Right? Lots of goods and services, their costs are going to come down, which means that although some people's incomes might be negatively affected, or some people's incomes might not grow as much as other people's, they are not necessarily worse off, because the goods and services they could afford may rise simply because of a decline in the prices of many goods and services. So ultimately, what we are looking at in terms of inequality in well-being is the relationship between income inequality and prices of all goods and services in the economy. It's not clear what's going to happen. That's an empirical question which we would have the answer to only as the years go by. Nonetheless, here is what I expect. Right? Okay, Emerald is going to do fabulous digital marketing with AI. His productivity gets exponentiated. Okay, what is your name? And Kunal, says, I don't care about the public policy course. Manoj has forced me to come to this lecture. I am sitting behind Emerald. Whatever Emerald can do, I don't care. Right? And then Emerald becomes this super rich person, and Kunal doesn't have a job. And then Kunal knows 5 other people who don't have a job. And then what do? Huh? कोई startup नहीं है. He's not picked up any skills. वो तो घर में है. कोई startup नहीं है. Right? So then he grabs another 5-10 people and he goes off on the streets. And you walk along the street and then you create trouble for Emerald, and Emerald says, how do I get rid of these people? And he calls the police or the politician. The politician says, I'll take care of it. Right? I'll just need to win the election for which we need to do 2 things. One, you help fund my elections. And second, I need to tell them that if I win the elections, I'll give you this and this, for which I'll need to tax you. So then Emerald pays for this in 2 ways, one of which being taxes. Right? So there will be a large part of humanity whose productivity will be close to 0, who will just get a dole out from the state. They have just not acquired the skills that are necessary or useful in a world where AI does a lot of things. They are not a part of the population whose productivity got exponentiated. But the small group of people whose productivity got exponentiated, they produce so much that there is enough to redistribute and give to a lot of people. So a lot of us will be like sheikhs in Saudi. Right? There is oil under the ground. You just relax or consume leisure, whichever terminology you like better, and you get a check every month just because there is oil under the ground, and you don't do one thing, which is what? You don't try to rebel. You don't go on the street. So you will get paid not to rebel. Okay. Now you as young people, you've got to decide which part of the population you want to be a part of. You want to be like Emerald? Or right? Okay. So Kunal could really choose. He chooses today. In fact, tomorrow's Kunal is a consequence of the choices that Kunal makes today. He could decide today that I am going to learn Python programming. I am going to see how I can stand on the shoulder of giants. If there is some student activity that I need to do, how will I leverage AI to do much more than people before? Here is what exponentiating means. I should be able to do as much as 10, 20, 100,000 people near me. I should be able to replace all of them. How do I do that? He could start working on that today so that when he enters the job market, he's an exponentiated person. Or he could just relax and he becomes a part of the sludge of humanity. Okay? Which is also fine. I have nothing against the sludge as long as it stays out of my way. Right? And highly productive people basically pay politicians to keep sludge out of their way. Good. That's inequality. The last bit, the most difficult bit. So inequality, basic answer is we don't know. Right? Depends on the relationship between changes in income distribution and changes in market prices. But expect major shifts in both. Income inequality is going to rise sizably, I think, and prices of goods are going to change phenomenally. Some prices plummeting massively. Okay. Last bit, market structure. Memory recall, no chance. No chance in hell. And think about how much of your life you've spent in memory recall. All the stuff you did in your schools. I would say more than half of what you did in your school was recall. That had no hope in hell 20 years ago. But now, I mean, it's laughable. Laughable. You've trained for unemployment in your school most of your time. And thank your parents for it. They were happy with you getting your grades. They never had the vision that these grades reflect nothing. And then thank yourself for it, for feeling happy that your parents are happy. Right? So when Emerald and I play politicians to keep you away from our offices, don't blame us. Right? You just didn't have a vision for your own future, nor did your parents. Right? And that's it, right? Okay. So Manoj, everything is on your shoulders. Always. So, right? Market structure. Let me come to the last bit of market structure. So some of you may have taken courses. Has anyone taken courses in microeconomics? Microeconomics, how many people have taken micro? But you're in the second year of your public policy program? Some of you must be in the second year of the program. No? You've taken course in microeconomics. Here? Here? Okay, good. Why are you the only one who's taken a course in microeconomics? Are you sure you are supposed to be in this room? And no one else took that paper? Okay, so then you've heard of this stuff called market structure. Okay, what is market structure? What is your name? Sidra, what is market structure? Very quickly. Bad. Next. See, Manoj doesn't behave this way. That's not your employer. Manoj and I are having a conversation in breakfast today that Manoj, you're too nice. And Manoj tells me you're too vicious. Right? We are trying to figure out, right? Next person, what is market structure? Yes. Monopoly, duopoly, perfect competition, blah 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 blah, right? What is the sizes of firms in an economy and how do these firms of different sizes interact with each other? Right? If I'm a monopoly producer, there is nobody to interact with. So the way I make decisions is I only consider myself and all the consumers that I'm facing. If I'm in a market where there are, I don't know, tens of thousands of producers, like a tomato seller in a sabzi mandi, right? Then again, there is no strategic interaction. Why? How much I sell has no influence on the price of tomatoes. I can decide not to turn up one day. Will I influence the price of tomatoes? No. I can decide to sell 10 times as much one day. Will I influence the price of tomatoes? No. Again, no strategic interaction. But if I have 2 firms or 3 firms, if I am in a setting where there are two other firms that produce certain goods, think about automotive producers. Mahindra, when it brings out a new car, better be concerned with how others are going to respond to it. Why? Because first of all, there is an other. It's not a monopoly. 2, there aren't so many others and the market isn't so big that Mahindra has no influence on the market. Okay? Right? Now, why did I say? Okay, market structure. This is what market structure is. Market structure is essentially a study of the granularity of an economy. Okay? How large or small are the firms, how many there are, and how they interact with each other. Okay, the granularity of the economy. That is what, and the strategic interactions between the firms in an economy of these grains. Okay. Now, what determines the size of these grains? Before we get into that question and how AI is going to influence the size of these grains, right? Let us understand what happens inside a firm and how it's different from a market. Okay. Now, some of you and many of you, are there places in Bangalore where you can go with a pickup truck and hire some people to do daily wage labor? Are there places where these men, they come in the morning and they kind of agglomerate? Outskirts, but they exist. Okay? Okay, so do you know a location that people will be able to identify with? KR Puram. I don't know where KR Puram is. People know, have all of you been to KR Puram? You have not been to KR Puram? Okay. Okay, who's not been to KR Puram? I have to say that to somebody. You have not been to KR Puram? Okay. Perfect. Right? So Emerald tells us that these are border areas to Bangalore. Right? These are basically markets for labor, right, Emerald? Right? It's called mandi. It's called mandi. Right? And I can just drive a pickup truck there and I bargain the wage. There's probably some going wage. There are a lot of people standing there and there will be some bargaining for the wage and there is some going daily wage. And they'll come in the truck, they do the work and I pay them at the end of the day. These markets exist, they exist in Kerala, they exist in Delhi. Again, Delhi also they exist in Gurgaon, these kind of outskirts areas of Delhi, right? So on and so forth. Now, consider two different scenarios. Scenario A, right? It rains. It rains in Bangalore someday and when I go to RK Puram, what is it? RK Puram is right? KR Puram, right? Now, so imagine it rains. It rains and then, we turn up there and because of the rain only half the workers have turned up to this mandi. Only half the workers have turned up to this mandi and one thing is for sure, doesn't matter if you're the Soviet Union, doesn't matter if you're India, doesn't matter market, doesn't matter whatever else, doesn't matter regulation, no regulation, free market, not free market. One thing is for certain, only half the work can get done that day because only half the workers are available. That is given. Okay. The only question that remains to be resolved is what work will get done and what work will not get done. Consider the following scenario. Manoj, I and Emerald go and I say 1,000 rupees. Emerald says 1,200. Yesterday the wage was 1,000 by the way. Emerald says 1,200, Manoj says 1,300. Right? I say 1,400, Manoj says 1,500. Emerald says 1,500. I say, well, my work is just not worth 1,400 rupees a day. I withdraw from the market. Emerald and Manoj take the labor. They get their work done. My work that day does not get done. Scenario A. It is the price mechanism which decides which work is going to get done and which work will not get done. It is the price mechanism which decides the allocation of labor. Okay. Scenario B. I run a construction company. Okay. Rains. Half the people don't turn up. Okay. Half of my work cannot get done. How is it decided which work should get done and which not? I have a large construction site. Some building activity should happen and some should not happen. I know not all of which got done yesterday will get done today. Some will need to happen, some cannot. How is it decided which work should happen and which not? Are wages bid up? No. It is not the invisible hand of markets, but the visible hand of the manager. The manager makes discretionary decisions that this work will get done and that work will not get done. One of the most fundamental questions of the science of economics is why is it that some economic activities are coordinated through the price system and markets? And why is it that some economic activities are coordinated by managers within firms? Why the invisible hand sometimes and why the visible hand at other times? And we do not have very good answers to these questions. Now these questions go back about 100 years if not more. Ronald Coase in fact got the Nobel Prize for answering this question. Then there was another Nobel Prize given Williamson for answering this question. So when you don't have an satisfactory answer to a question despite 2 Nobel Prizes, then you know that this question is sufficiently difficult. This also tells you that you don't have to satisfactorily answer a question to win a Nobel Prize. You just have to try. Okay? And I think most of us in most of our lives don't even try. Some people's failures count much more than our greatest successes. Do not be such a person. Even if you fail, it must be something exciting that you did. Don't make your successes mediocre. Right? Don't live a subhuman life. There is much more that you can do. Don't be a cattle. Okay? Now, right? So this is one of the most fundamental questions of economics. Why is it that some economic activities are coordinated through the market, and why is it that some economic activities are coordinated through the firm? This is closely related to the question of vertical integration. Why is it that a company like General Electric Corporation does so much? It makes light bulbs, jet engines and everything in between. Why is it not many small companies who are buying and selling from each other in the market? Why is everything done through managerial discretion within one large company? Okay. Now, why am I telling you all of this? The reason I am telling you all of this is, of course, this is closely related to market structure, because when things happen within a large company, then the grains that make up the economy are big, and you have few big grains, right? When things are done through a market, you have many small grains which are talking to each other through the market and using the price mechanism to talk to each other, right? Why am I telling you all this? Because AI is fundamentally going to alter market structure. This is my sense of things. Again, we will know for certain only once some years go by and we see the impact of AI on the economy, right? I was talking to a friend of ours, Manoj and mine, Kumar, right, the other day, and Kumar was telling me, hey Vipin, right, Kumar has been in the public policy circle in Delhi for long, and Kumar was telling me, right, Vipin, remember the time where in Delhi, people who wanted to start a think tank, they would come, there would be one or two very excited people, right, and he or she would set up a think tank, and then they would hire like a second group of people who are kind of motivated, and then a third group of people who are not at all motivated, and then a fourth group of like clowns, right? Okay. He said, we don't need that anymore. You don't need to hire somebody to edit videos who doesn't believe in your kind of what the think tank is trying to do. Why? Because you automate it. Earlier you needed somebody because you needed to talk in a technical language to the video editing software. You don't need it. You can just speak in English or Hindi or Malayalam or whatever else, or Kannada. Right? So then Kumar was saying you don't need those people anymore. You can have one individual who's very motivated, right? And he leverages AI to run a think tank with very few people. Right? The size of the grain may well shrink. I can't say it's going to shrink, but there are forces that are working in that direction, that the size of the grain may shrink. Okay? And people might get into more contractual relations with each other. Okay? Earlier you had to have an employee and know what is the relationship between having an employee and a contractual relation. The employee is much more closely integrated with you. Right? Now AI can do much closer integration than any employee can. This is what I'm finding with my research assistants. Right? I get there first of all, it's available whenever I am available. Right? I can query as many questions as I want, right? And no drinking, right? And so on and so forth. It integrates. So see, if each of us integrates very closely with AI, then we don't need to integrate with each other that closely in the workspace, which means that we can have more loose contractual relationship rather than having employees. So my expectation is that the sizes of firms is going to shrink. We will get many more small firms instead of few large firms. The market structure is going to fundamentally change. What that also means is that we are going to make much greater use of the invisible hand and less use of the visible hand of managers. So the price system becomes much more important, which actually connects back to what I began with. Right? Interventions that damage or prevent the invisible hand from working smoothly become even more costly if many more human beings rely on the invisible hand as a means of coordination between them than the visible hand of managers. So if one large firm is going to break down into 10 small firms, each of whom have contracts with each other and are buying and selling based on prices, then government regulation of prices becomes that much more problematic. Okay? Right. So let me actually close there. I'm going to sort of give you a brief overview before I close. Right? We began with the question of how AI is going to affect economic prosperity. Right? Our answer was that it's a windfall gain, but our ability to realize the full windfall gain depends on being able to reallocate resources from where AI is going to be most impactful to areas where AI is least impactful. That reallocation depends on the ease of starting new businesses, closing old businesses, and responding to price signals. Okay? Second is AI on inequality. Inequality in well-being depends on two things: income inequality and the prices of various goods and services. AI is going to affect both, and therefore to say whether AI is going to how AI is going to affect, there is somebody playing on the phone. Everyone look at her. No, you. Yes. No. Person behind you. We don't need anybody on the phone. Thank you. Right? Right? How AI influences inequality depends on how the prices of goods change, right? And how my income changes, right? For instance, my income may not grow, but if it becomes much easier to diagnose cancer, then my consumption basket has actually improved, right? But it's it's kind of complicated. It's not easy to say how kind of inequality and how the lower income. Often we are not interested in inequality only. We are interested in sometimes we may not care how well the rich are doing. Often we are concerned with how are the poorest people doing, right? Some questions of inequality are concerned with bottom 20%, bottom 30% of the population. How are they doing, right? And then you really carefully have to look at the changes in the prices of the goods and services they tend to consume, right? And the last question was market structure. And AI will tend to have an impact on market structure. It is very possible, right? Again, all of this is conjectural, right? We will only know as time passes, but it's very possible that we get many more smaller firms, far fewer large firms, many more smaller firms who have contractual relationships with each other, because people don't need to as closely integrate. We can closely integrate with AI, and with each other we can have these loose contractual relations, which is nice. There is much more freedom in having contractual relations than having a boss, right? But that also means that the economic system as a whole depends much more on prices and the invisible hand than the visible hand of managers. That means government regulations of prices becomes that much more damaging to the economy. Okay? Let me close here, and then I'm happy to take questions.
I'm Maithili. So you were talking about the fall in income as well as a fall in price level in case of the second point. So don't you think there should be a balance between the proportion of fall in income and price level to benefit the person?
So, so let me actually clarify what I was saying, right? With regards to income, there are kind of three distinct effects that are going to happen. One, some people's productivity is going to get exponentiated. So you will see a growth in their income. Okay. This is assuming that other people's incomes remain fixed. You will just get kind of the higher end skyrocket. The other issue with income inequality is that in the short term, right, as some jobs are not required anymore, people who find it difficult to train and transition to other jobs, their incomes might actually decline. So you might see that happen in the short term. That really depends on the kind of economy you have, the kind of culture you have, and how entrepreneurial people are, right? So there will be changes in the distribution of income distribution, right? Exactly how it spans out will be tricky, right? The other thing that we are likely to see is from the political economy point of view, you will see pressures as people like Emerald start making lots of money, right? Others like whoever will start going to the street, protesting and so on. There will be political pressures for more reallocation, and Emerald might just find it worthwhile to pay for that stuff so that these people don't annoy him, right? And then you will see kind of a redistribution of income from the high end to the low end. That will also probably happen. Right? It's not very clear where it will happen, when it will happen, right? Prices is of course the most complicated thing. It remains unclear as to the prices, which are the prices that will decline, right? Because the decline in prices is, go back to the story of discovery of coal, which is such a standard product, has been around with humanity for long. If I ask you, how will the prices of all goods and services in an economy change because we have more coal, you would find it terribly difficult to answer that question, right? Because we know price of coal declines. Right? Suppose someone in Scotland decides it's not worth my while to rear sheep anymore, right? And because no one wants wool, right? And she decides to get rid of sheep and she converts her kind of farm into a hotel or whatever else, right? Now to run a hotel she needs waiters. She's going to demand more waiters. The wages of waiters would go up. So one price has changed. Now if those waiters spend on certain goods and services, the price of those goods and services will go up. If the people who were earlier rearing sheep, they have lost jobs. Whatever goods and services they spend on, demand there has gone down. So the price of those goods and services will decline. And so on and so forth. I could keep sort of telling this story. For something as simple as coal, right? We don't know how discovery of new coal is going to affect the whole price structure of the economy. How AI is going to affect the price structure of the economy, very, very difficult to tell. Which goods are going to become cheaper? We know in general goods are going to become cheaper. full stop, because it's a windfall gain. But which goods are going to become cheaper, right? By how much, by when, is all very tricky, right? And then ultimately, how do you come, if you take each person, right, and you look at what is the change in their income, and you look at what is the change in the price of the basket of goods they buy, and you put them together, only then you would know what is the welfare impact on them. This is very, very, very difficult to do, right? You have to wait a lot of time for the economy to produce this kind of data. But people who are interested in public policy should have this view of the economy. The view is more important, right? Definitive answers are less significant. But the questions you must have. Yeah, good question. Yeah.
So one more thing. So in the market structure, you also mentioned that it would lead to breaking down of firms, like from bigger firms to smaller firms. So it leads to even more instability in the market, especially related to price levels. So what do you think about the stability of the price levels? Will it become more unstable because only suppose one person will be working in a certain project or something like that using AI? So AI leads to instability in price level, so too much of fluctuations?
Very, very difficult questions, very good questions, right? And if I were you, I would pursue a PhD in economics, right? These are very, very good questions, terrific questions, right? I don't know, right? Would AI increase the instability in prices? Now, let me actually, what's your name?
Maithili.
So let me actually kind of tell you guys a little bit about Maithili's question, right? Now note that any change in price, right, originates from a change in human behavior. Okay, somebody has decided to do something differently, which has resulted in the production of more or less of something, which has changed the price of that, which indeed causes further changes in human behavior. So the price begins from a change in human behavior, and it ends in a change in human behavior. A change in price begins from a change in human behavior, and it creates a change in human behavior. Now, first of all, it's not very clear to me that we will have smaller firms. That's my kind of hunch, right? It's not something that I've read anywhere. I have not seen any theoretical papers on this, nor have seen any empirical evidence on this matter. But I would not be surprised if that happens, right? Again, for the very simple reason, I think the reason why you have an employee and not a long-term contract is you need a close coordination, right? Day-to-day close coordination. It's not something you can write on a contract and you buy 2 days from now, 3 days from now, whatever, right? The product you're creating is so idiosyncratic, right, that there are many details involved which cannot be written down in a complete contract kind of a fashion, right? This is a little bit of stuff that Williamson talks about, for which he got the Nobel Prize, right? But I don't think that's all of what there is to why firms exist, but this is a little bit of what Williamson talks about, right? Now, since you can closely coordinate with AI, and each of us, think about a big globe, and we are all around this globe. We touch this globe, and we are closely coordinated with this globe, right? It's like an oracle and a globe at the same time, right? So then we don't really kind of need direct interaction with each other in a close sense, because our closest coordinated stuff happens with AI. With each other, we can do more kind of stuff that I can clearly write down a contract Maithili that I want this product from you in 3 days from now, right? So I think so. That is why I think firms are going to get smaller. Now, as firms get smaller, will you get more changes in prices? My impression is you're absolutely right, and the reason is fairly simple. Go back to the question of the visible hand of managers and the invisible hand of markets, right? Earlier, right? Suppose I am running a construction company and some workers don't turn up. I decide which work should be done, which should not be done. Was there any change in wages? No. Wage is just a price. No change in wage, but allocation of resources happened. So when things happen within a firm, allocation happens without any change in price. External events do not change prices. When things happen through a market, external events change prices. Because when Manoj, Emerald and I went to the market, the reason how we figured out which work should be done was through bidding up of wages. So external events change prices, and therefore we know. So now, since much more of the activity will be done outside of firms and through markets, price mechanism will play much more of a role, and it plays a role by changing, right? So I would definitely see that, and there is a way to test this out, right? So you can look at the kind of, in the US economy, I think it's Bureau of Labor Statistics, they collect 100,000 prices, which is 1 lakh. I don't know why we use 1 lakh and all of that. It's kind of confusing. Right? We should stop that. We should also stop the writing Kannada on this thing. I said it. There you go. Please, I would like to get out of the airport before, right? I had to say it. It is true. Right? We have to stop such things, right? And property titles need to be protected. Police needs to step in. This is why we pay taxes. Now that said, where was I? Emerald? Where was I? Emerald? Emerald, I am talking to you, Emerald. No, that's not where I was. That's not where I was. There is a way to test this out, right? Which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics collects 100,000 prices of 100,000 goods every month in 3 cities in the US. The reason they do 3 cities is because different cities' prices may be different, right? So you have this time series of 100,000 prices over many years per month basis, and you can look at their fluctuations, right? Before and after AI, after controlling for a bunch of factors to see whether this is happening. Now, if you do that, you find more fluctuations. Somebody might say, but more fluctuations, even after controlling for other factors. They could say AI could cause more fluctuations in many different ways. Then you need to show, no, the more fluctuations is arising because firm size has declined. So you need to have a variable which you need to kind of have as an intermediary variable, right? So you need to regress, price changes on, firm size changes, and then firm size changes, because of AI, right? So it needs to be rooted through this thing. All of this is good. This would be a very good PhD dissertation. So if I were you, I would kind of write the GRE and leave for the US tomorrow. I don't know. That is what I tell everybody. If not yesterday. But then yesterday people fail, so I tell tomorrow. Okay, very good.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
I have a small question. So, sir, you told that the people will improve their skills exponentially using AI. Yeah. Only their income will be more, and the rest of them might be the humanity sludge. So, sir, do you think that?
Did I say that? I might have. In the flow of things, I say so many.
Yeah, it's fine. Not my question. So what I mean to ask is that what will be the effect of AI in the current corporate work culture that we see that is recommended on the internet, say 70-hour or 90-hour work week?
So what's your name?
Yajat.
So Yajat, my feeling is that, I think we as human beings, how we treat each other and how we treat others, right? Look, when some of these men, I don't know if any of the women corporate leaders have said, let's work 70 hours. Maybe they have. But, I think Indra Nooyi used to work long hours, right? So, when they say they work 70 hours, I think what we should take from it is not the 70 hours. I think even if 1 hour of our life we work like them, that would be something. Every moment they spend, it's very meaningful for them. They are not working 70 hours because somebody told them to work 70 hours. They are not working 10 hours because somebody told them to work 10 hours. Right? They are driven to do things in their life. Create companies, create products, right? Change the world. And they're willing to put a lot at stake to do that. They're very motivated. Okay? And which makes their life meaningful. When you get up in the morning and you go to work, you're really looking forward to that. When you go back in the evening, you're going because you're physically exhausted and you're mentally exhausted and you just still haven't figured, think about, Marie Curie, right? She's working on her scientific problems, right? There is this story, I don't know how true this is, right? Somebody wanted to give her a dress as a present. She said, it's all fine, give me a dress which I can also wear to my lab. Because I spend most of my time in my lab. Now if you say, oh, she used to spend, 18 hours in her lab, that means nothing. Even if we can spend one moment in our lab, the way she did, because she's really involved. In that moment, she's there. If you force somebody to be in your office for 70 hours, the fellow always wants to be on the phone. And then you say, no, I will block all your phone stuff. That is blocked. But he doesn't want to be there. You've gotten a body. His mind is not there. It's an utter waste of time. Right? And so I don't think the discussion should at all be about 70 hours or 80 hours. Let's begin our discussion with one meaningful hour, where even if you had all the things you wanted in your life, you would still turn up. Because that's something you want. Work not for, so when, again, economics, when we sort of think about work in economics, it's disutility. This is the old view. You're forcing people into a factory or into a farm, feudalism, early stage capitalism. All of that is gone. And now, and since you mentioned AI, in the AI world, I think we will have even more. There will be so many goods and services around that most of us can get a check and not do anything. Right? Like the sheikhs in Saudi. We're all going to be sheikhs. We could change our, what's your name?
Yajat.
You'll be Sheikh Yajat. If I were you, I would call him that for the next 2 years. But you guys are not like that, right? So, but point is that, it's about finding for you, right? How old are you? 20? Almost 20? Yeah, so let's take 20, right? I think for you, it's about finding what is meaningful for you to do. Whatever conversation there is about the 70 hours or 700 hours or 7 hours, it's irrelevant to you. For you, it's about finding where you get up in the morning and you feel, this is something I want to do. Even if you're paid or not paid, even if everything you want is taken care of, where you feel motivated to do that and you are happy doing it and you feel like turning up, right? And also, how do you create a company where there are other people like you around you? Every day it's good to meet people who are motivated to do the things they want to do. Right? You don't want to meet people who are cribbing about the 70 hours or 60 hours or yeah. So that, I think that's the more meaningful conversation.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So would the influence of AI in these different factors, would it differ in heavily regulated markets, like those of probably communist nations? How would it differ between a democracy and a communist nation?
Yeah, so, democracies are of various kinds, right? There are free market democracies. There are democracies which are called democracies. So, democracies differ on multiple margins, right? One margin is in terms of the freedom to do businesses. Democracies also differ with regards to security of property titles. So forget businesses. Just in terms of sheer security of property titles, some countries are called democracies simply because there are elections, right? So it's not very clear to me that in some countries democracies is the idea of consensual decision making is ingrained because of a long change in not a long but long drawn change in culture. Okay, what I have in mind, of course, is Western Europe. Right? The culture of consensual decision making does not arise overnight, nor does it arise at the polling booth or the right. So right now, I think the ability from a very narrow economic point of view, the ability to leverage AI, my impression is depends less on communist or democratic. It depends on how quickly the fluidity with which people can go from working in one area to another area, the fluidity with which capital can go from being employed in one area to another area, from one industry to another industry, and how quickly that can happen. There are some countries communist countries that can try to make that happen. It's not very clear they would succeed. There are some democracies which have more free market, some that are less free market, right? So all of that, I think within democracies there would be a kind of a wide gulf between different sets of countries. Right? Communist countries tend to struggle. They tend to struggle because fundamentally they are not freedom oriented, right? So don't get too excited about, who's heard about DeepSeek? Don't get too excited. Huh? It's one thing to catch up to the Americans. It's quite another thing to be an American. They have no chance in hell, the Chinese, nor the Indians. Western Europeans, you can forget it. They are too lazy, right? And plus, United States has a world culture of freedom, and you experience that culture of freedom and entrepreneurship not only ability to set up new firms, but even exiting one firm and going to another firm, right? So I sort of went from one PhD program to the other, and the head of the department of the first PhD program, said, it was wonderful to have you. We gave you a scholarship, blah blah blah, right? And if you ever want to come back, you don't like that program, please do, and I wish you all the very best. It's a culture of openness to change. Here in India, you'd be like, you are cheating on me? You're leaving my PhD program? You're stabbing me on the back? I will screw you for the rest. Such a culture doesn't sort of, right? So the United States is fabulous in terms of it's a great culture of it's a culture that accommodates and supports change. The economic rules support creation of new companies, right? So I don't think the communist countries have a chance. They'll keep playing the catch-up game, right? It's one thing. So here is. If, for instance, the Chinese had come up with the general purpose AI first, or the Indians had, or the Western Europeans had, then yes, I would be like, wow, this is incredible. But catching up to the Americans, this is a different story. This is not to say catching up is easy. Huh? If catching up was so easy, Indians or Western Europeans would have come up with something. They haven't. So you must appreciate, that particular individual in China or the ecosystem he works in or she works in, right, for that result. Yes, but still, catch up. Right? I watched this film called Letters from Iwo Jima. Have you seen this film? It's this Japanese general. He's trying to defend this island called Iwo Jima in Japan. Fellow studied in the United States at some point. Okay? And since the emperor had asked him to defend this island, he is going to defend this island. And he and all the men there will die defending the island because the emperor has asked him to defend the island. But he knows that they have no chance in hell. He thinks about his time in the United States, the amount of capital, the freedoms that they have. And what he realizes is that all that capital machinery has now being used to make war machinery. So he knows what that economy is capable of churning out. And immediately after the war is over, it all goes back to making civilian goods and services. Right? It's an extremely flexible economy. It's a fabulously sort of change-supporting culture, right? In my lifetime, if I see another country, right, do anything that the Americans do better than them or before them, I would be, tremendously surprised, to say the least. So leave, get a visa, leave. Okay, good. Next question. Or we are done maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Manoj can decide when I'm done. There is maybe, I don't know, you decide.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
I am Jay Prakash, public policy student. This week, the Chinese app DeepSeek, it was highly disruptive, right? And the responses from the governments and the already established companies like OpenAI, Meta, Google, all these companies. And also the response from the Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw. He said the data that is being processed by DeepSeek for the Indian consumers, we will try to do it on a local server, right? So I have this thing that I start to explore all these apps. For example, when ChatGPT got released, I used to use that. And Perplexity, I use Perplexity more than Google. And Gemini, all these things. Grok also, I use Grok to generate images, all these things, right? Twitter's AI. So I was curious, but I was also careful. I was reading their privacy policy guidelines, terms and conditions yesterday. So all the data that the app processes that is stored in the servers in China, right? From the regulatory point of view in India, we are yet to implement the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. The government just came up with the rules 20 days back. So there are two responses to it. One is having a competitor to the particular AI, like the case of US or something, or the regulatory response as it exists in Europe. So as India, I may sound nationalist, but are we going to create one more product that competes? It's also geopolitical, right? The AI has also entered the geopolitical space now. Are we prepared enough to tackle that challenges in terms of personal data, national security, internal security, all these factors through regulatory mechanism, or what is the laggard factor that we are not able to come up with something, even if we are copying it, coming up in the race, that's also a challenge, right? We are not able to do that also. We have Bangalore, the IT software hub of India, Silicon Valley of India. But there is not one product, right? Even if that comes, that will be a copycat of the existing ones. Like how we had Coup and all, that copycatted this Twitter.
Yeah, so, the minister's response. So if I were the minister, that wouldn't be my response. That's a loserly response. You've already lost the game. Here's what you're saying. I've lost. We will run it on our servers so that they don't take our data. Right? That's not the problem. Why is it that Indians did not produce this object? Why is it that the Americans first got their product out? Why is it that the Chinese were the first to chase them down? And where are our people? right? I would call all the directors of the IITs, ISIS, and say, what's going on? You're on government pay. Why hasn't this happened? Nobody sleeps till I get my product out. Nobody sleeps. I mean, bare minimum so they don't die. It's not a clown show. There's much more of a serious problem, right? And then I would bring in all the entrepreneurs here. How can I help you do this? How have I failed? Because I know that you work very hard. I know you work very hard. I know you are very motivated people. I know you pay your labor very well. I know some of you are educated at exceptional places. So why have we failed collectively? If we have failed collectively, then I have failed. What is it that I can do so that you can make this happen? And there the answer is very clear. It's not the buck doesn't stop at the one ministry or the other ministry. The fact of the matter is we are very low on the economic freedom index. It's very difficult to do business in India. Unless we climb the economic freedom index, we should not expect innovation. We should not expect to be catching up to the Americans as fast as the Chinese do. So there is a lot for government of India to do. If our response is always going to be this kind of a loserly response, that whenever the Chinese come up with something, we'll put it on our server. You're accepting your position as since you're a nationalist, I will put it in your nationalist way. You're accepting a third-rate position in the kind of international scheme of things. Right? A nation who leads the world comes up with products which people of other parts of the world can use at very low cost. And we should be able to do that across product lines repeatedly, year after year. Right? And so, I would approach it much more aggressively. I would take it as a very serious signal of something fundamentally wrong in our economic system. Right? And I would not stop, about it, putting this on a server. This anybody can do.
So it's also absurdly funny that in 2020, when the LAC conflict with China was happening, they banned all these Chinese apps, right? Around 20-25 apps they banned, including TikTok. But now the AI game it's been so strong that they are not able to do so, DeepSeek. So they just came up with this workaround.
And this goes back to my letter from Iwo Jima thing. You cannot fight an economy that is 10 times your size. Right? So you cannot fight the Chinese by kind of banning stuff. They are 10 times your size. Right? So this general, when he was defending this island of Iwo Jima, he knew he couldn't defend it against the Americans. Right? So the first thing that you need to do if you're a nationalist is to make sure you do things so that your economy is, if not the largest, one of the largest in the world. Right? Do you know that if the Indian economy grows at the rate of 5%, then by 2047 we are as big as Vietnam? Not as big in terms of per capita income. If it grows at 10%, by 2047 we are as good as Poland, per capita income. Okay. There is a lot left to do, right? So this kind of approach where we need to do a lot more than just put stuff on our server. Your concerns are very legitimate. Security concerns, data concerns, right? But again, as you start getting poorer and poorer, then the only way to be secure is to just kind of start putting up more and more of these barriers. If you want to be secure in a technologically advanced way, you need to be a technologically advanced economy that is innovating, doing new things across product lines, not one product and not 1 year, but in a sustained fashion. You need to rethink your whole economic system, and you need to rethink the idea of what people are free to do and what they are not free to do and why. Right? That's where the conversation needs to be. Yeah, there is one scheme which destroys all entrepreneurs, which is called low economic freedom. So the only scheme you need is high economic freedom, and you could just shut down all the other schemes. Make in India all of that. It'll all happen. Right? So that's it.
I would now request Soumya ma'am, Martha ma'am and Manoj sir to please come up on stage and present the token of appreciation. Good morning, everyone. As we conclude this insightful policy nut session on AI economic prosperity, inequality, and market structure, I take this opportunity to express our heartfelt gratitude to all those who made this session a success. First and foremost, a sincere thank you to you, Dr. Vipin P. Veetil, for sharing his invaluable insights with us today. Your expertise in monetary economics, macroeconomics, and agent-based modeling has provided us with a deeper understanding of how AI is shaping economic policies and market structures. Your thought-provoking perspectives have truly enriched our discussions. I would like to express a heartfelt gratitude to Professor Manoj Matthews and Professor Martha Sucharita for their unwavering support in making this session possible and for guiding us in every step. I would also like to extend my gratitude to the organizing team, Policy Nudge, for curating this session and ensuring a seamless experience. Your dedication to fostering meaningful policy discussions is commendable. Lastly, a big thank you to all the participants and attendees for your active engagement and thoughtful questions. Your enthusiasm and curiosity makes these discussions even more impactful. With that, I once again extend our heartfelt thanks to everyone present, and we look forward to more such enriching discussions in the future. Thank you.